What is up, my friends, and welcome to another edition of the XFL Week in Review podcast. We have a special edition. We are talking about this merger talk. We have Mike Mitchell, XFL Insider, on. You're going to hear stuff that you've never heard before people talk about in this interview. You're not going to want to miss it. So how we're going to start off the show, we're going to do our recap of the big announcement from Axios about the XFL and USFL merging. And then we'll get right into the interview, and we hopefully have answered all your questions. Appreciate everybody on social media asking questions, and I think we kind of covered everything we can in this episode. So stay tuned and enjoy. What is up, XFL Nation? Let's just break it right down. The Football League, XFL and USFL, are in merger talks. Let's get right into this report from Axios. There's no need to do anything fancy, but here it is. Pro Football League, XFL, and USFL are in advanced talks to merge. Three sources familiar with the situation tell Axios. Sportico also has come out with something saying that their sources are telling them, but no official word just yet. No one is talking, but there is talking. Why it matters, combining the two leagues, of course, we know what's going on with the history of spring football. That would be a problem. The longevity of these things. And, we saw this year with the XFL and USFL going head to head between player contracts and then also ratings. We saw that they were kind of, pulling from each other, merging it all into one. We all knew, we all said it. We said, give it 3 years. The XFL did it 1, the USFL did it 2. And the USFL going into its third year, now we see that the USFL, that this is potentially happening. So the merger would be structured as a merger of equals. That's an interesting way of putting it, and would require regulatory approval. I don't know why that is, one of the sources said. I don't understand why you would need that. The league hopes to combine before the 2024 season. So the goal is to get this done before the 2024 season. Remember, the XFL draft, they're having showcases in October, and then there's supposed to be a draft in October as well. So you want to get this thing done. And I mean, just a massive change. I mean, we all have the players and the teams. I mean, Birmingham Stallions going up against the St. Louis Battlehawks, DC Defenders against the Pittsburgh Maulers. I mean, we've got some play here, and potentially with all of the broadcast partners. And we'll get to that in a second, but between Fox and Disney, it'll be just like it was when the XFL came out in 2020. So the big picture, of course, they failed to catch on. All the attempts in the past, we all know all about that stuff. By the numbers, Fox executive had previously said the USFL has been profitable and planned to invest more into spring football. With the XFL, we reported here, lost $60 million. Viewership for the XFL and USFL games were meager. I don't know about that, pal. They were pretty good. Averaging north of 600,000 viewers. I mean, you can talk about the money that MLS got and other sports leagues got compared to the viewers that the spring football leagues brought in. I think we're good there. And then the USFL championship had 1.2 million viewers, and the XFL had 1.4. They were pretty much the same thing. So, and then we all know the history of the XFL between Vince McMahon and then bringing it back, and then the pandemic, and then Dwayne Garcia, Dwayne Johnson, Redbird Capital, and then, of course, the USFL and Fox as well. So there you have it. And that's it. No one is talking right now, but a couple of the interesting things is, number one, is the huge thing that they actually are talking about merging, that actually could happen by the end of the week, as early as the end of the week, which then I don't understand how that correlates with the having to get regulatory approval. I still don't understand that piece. But what are your thoughts? I mean, are we going to have a USFL division, an XFL division? Are they going to keep the XFL name? Are they going to keep the USFL name? It's a something of equals. Are they going to kind of do something different where they're going to be under one umbrella, but maybe, the USFL kind of plays their deal, just kind of like two different divisions, the XFL and USFL. But what do they call this league? Who knows? I mean, so we're on this as you. This is a lot sooner than we thought. We thought by year 3. I thought maybe they would go one more year, but the XFL needed to show growth. The USFL, I mean, they can't compete. Merging as one is really good. And remember, this also affects the indoor football league with the XFL has their partnership with them. Then both leagues have a good relationship with the NFL. Maybe this is even something that the NFL had thought of. Hey, maybe we need you guys to get together. There's all the production stuff. I mean, are they going to kind of act as two separate entities? There's a lot to hammer out. Clearly, if this is almost a done deal, this means that this has been talked about for a while. So I assume that this has been happening for months. We know that the XFL is looking to move their Vegas location. Potentially, Mike Mitchell, reported on this that the XFL was looking at maybe Nashville or Arizona to move their teams. So I mean, they're kind of doing their thing, and the other leagues doing their thing. I mean, they say they want to merge before this season. How that all plays out, there's a lot of questions, but the big thing right now, XFL, USFL, and merger talks, and we potentially get something done by the end of the week, because remember, these guys have got to sell season tickets. We saw the USFL putting out their season tickets. The XFL has put out their season ticket packages, but man, as a spring football fan, talk about different leagues are going up against these different teams. I mean, Birmingham Stallions, DC Defenders, that would be a lot of fun. I mean, the Pittsburgh Maulers playing. I mean, this opens up a lot of exciting avenues. I'm shocked. You're shocked. Let us know what you think in the comments about this big merger. All right, we are here with XFL insider Mike Mitchell. How are you doing, Mr. Mike? It's been quite a couple days.
Yeah, no question about it. My head's still spinning from all this stuff that's been going on. Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Yeah, and I just want to point out to the fans at home, I'm wearing an XFL shirt with a Pittsburgh Maulers hat. And I also want to point out that I was at a establishment to watch the Steelers game on Monday because my wife is Pittsburgh family Steelers fans. We went out there and I wore my Maulers hat and my Maulers shirt, and somebody stopped me and said, "Yeah, go Maulers." So,
oh, that's cool.
yeah.
That's cool.
And now all of a sudden we have all this crazy news. So we'll first start off. What was your reaction when the news came out, and were you hearing anything before the news came out from Axios?
Yeah, I'm still in disbelief about this whole thing. Like, it's hard for me to believe that this is coming together so fast and so soon. It seems like it's accelerated quickly, because a few months ago, I heard about the possibility being floated around about the two leagues talking to each other about a potential working relationship in the future. It just so happens that there are key figures on both sides of the coin here in the USFL and the XFL that have worked together in the past. So my understanding is that the idea was floated by two significant members of the football operations team for the USFL and the XFL, that they talked about potentially the football side getting together. And what if we work together? What if we merge together and put our leagues together, put our heads together and make a super spring league? And then that idea was pitched to upper management and meetings were set up. And so I'm surprised all the reports that came out. So I knew, look, there's so many layers to this, right? So like, as far as like the XFL side goes, I know that they did not match the expectations that they had. And I know personally from talking to people on the inside, there were revenue markers that the league did not meet in 2023. They thought, quite frankly, they thought they were going to be more successful than they were. And so in this offseason, I don't want to say it's been penny pinching, but it's been a lot of like, cost cutting. It's been a lot of like, they're measuring their financial model to make sure that they can continue to survive.
So it's like the
And
marketing squads got let go, and then the coaches' contracts, the assistant.
Exactly, Mark. So you got the full-time employees becoming seasonal, and then we just saw a recent example of this story that was on the website there at xflnewshub.com about how assistant coaches are basically being laid off and being told that you can file for unemployment and then you can return to work when training camps begin. Now, presumably in an XFL season, training camps would begin, or a mini camp maybe in December, but most likely January training camp in Arlington. And so the idea is, this is rough talk, but the idea is you get paid when you show up for work. So it'd be from January to, let's just say in the XFL season, theoretically, till May. and then that's it. No 12. And now the current setup is for the head coaches and the coordinators, the offensive and defensive coordinators. Don't ask me why the special teams coordinators are not lumped into there, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But that they have 2-year contracts that they're still paid, that they're still treated like full-time employees. It's the USFL model, which was kind of funny because I think we mentioned in the article. That's what the USFL does with their coaching staffs. They don't pay their coaches year round. So they're only paid seasonally, when they're on the job, when they're on the clock. So I kind of find it funny that that was already being put in play for the future of the XFL, which could now be a league with the USFL. So this is really accelerated fast. And what's fascinating about it to me, and I'm sure a lot of the guys at the top of the wheel there, the top floor of the building are very happy about this, is how tight-lipped it is. I've been reaching out to everybody within the XFL and the USFL, and a lot of the personnel people, the coaches, the players, they are in the dark. They don't know. I've talked to PR people, I've talked to people in ticketing, I've talked to salespeople, back and forth. They are truly in the dark about this because they've done a very good job because it started out, like I said, the top of the football chain in the XFL and USFL kind of connected with each other. And then they pitched the idea to management, and then meetings were set up, and now it's been kept very quiet. Eric Shanks, Russ Brandons, Jerry Carnell, Danny Garcia. These talks have been going on for a while, and it's gone from point A to point B. I figured when I heard that they were going to talk with each other, I really wasn't too surprised about it because there's so many close relationships between people in the USFL and XFL that have worked together in the past. That happens in the executive world, the football world. Coaches work together. You got so many guys in the USFL that are from the XFL, from the AAF.
Well, it's
And
a
vice versa. You
small
got so many
world. That's definitely
It's a
something.
small world.
Even then,
Yeah,
including when they
exactly.
throw in the CFL guys, they know each other, and indoor football
Right.
league guys know each other, and yeah.
Yeah, it's so tied up. You got so many coaches in the XFL in 2023 that are from the US that were in the USFL in 2022, and players too. And then there's a lot of guys in the USFL that were part of XFL 2020 and part of the AAF. And you got Moose Johnson, who's part of the AAF and the XFL in 2020, and now of course the USFL. So he's a key figure in all this. So the way it shakes out right now is like people like the executives I talk to, personnel guys, GM guys, they're hoping that someone gives them a heads up and lets them know, because there's a lot of uncertainty right now and there's a lot floating out there. Most of it is rumors and speculation because that's what what people are hearing, thinking. And so I just had a top executive, two different executives, one from the XFL and the USFL, both asked me if I knew anything.
There you go.
So, I
That's
mean,
kind of
that's
what's
pretty
going on.
hilarious. I had coaches reach out to me 2 days ago saying, "Hey, Mike, is this real?" I said, "Yeah, it's real. I knew there'd be like preliminary exploratory talks. Hey, maybe
Which
we'll
was
talk
kind
later."
of what the when the CFL XFL talks were. It was
Right.
framed that way. This one by Axios was framed they are close to being done and they're equal partners.
Which is wild, right? For them to figure that out, because there's a lot of logistics involved here. Number one, when is your season going to be played? Where are your games going to air? Are you going to air on all the networks that you have? In a perfect world, it'd be ABC, NBC, Fox. That'd be pretty awesome. How many teams are you going to have? How are you going to set up the travels, the hubs? And there's the matter of the CBA that the USFL currently has in play. It's a 3-year deal with their players. The XFL does not have any kind of CBA. So how do you figure that part of it out? Equal partnership. Is it 50-50, 51-49? How do you deal with the rules? Both of the leagues have very similar playing rules. There's some tweaks here and there, but you've got, of course, the OT shootout. You've got the tiered extra points with the 3-point conversion. You got the
Yeah.
clock rules. So there's a lot of stuff that's very similar from both leagues. The downside of this is a fan fiction thing that has become to reality. The number one thing people talk about when they, with the XFL, with the USFL, is either expansion or they talk about the two leagues merging. And here
Yes.
we are, the possibilities here. So it sounds like a lot of fun. And, but there's some negative spots to this too. There's some negative sides to this. Like if we're going from, and there's a lot of scuttlebutt right now. I usually do not like dealing with rumors, but there's a lot of scuttlebutt right now about this not being a 16-team entity. Some people are saying it's going to be only 10 teams in 2024, starting in April. running through July. Similar timeline as the USFL, falls in line with the Fox NBC schedule, that kind of thing. And then there's some people who think it'll be 12 or 14. So that maybe it'll be a little bit less, but I think it's going to be, it's crazy because nobody likes to hear this, but the XFL did not hit the revenue markers that they wanted to in 2023. And the USFL was disappointed with year 2. Their ratings went down, their business went down. They were disappointed in the Birmingham market. They absolutely thought with the better time slots, with more network showings, with coming around for a second year, that they would lure more mainstream football and casual football fans to watch their league.
And having multiple hubs too.
And multiple hubs, new sites, Memphis, Michigan, etc., that this would be enough of a draw. Hey, we proved ourselves. We got a good product. Did you see Cavante Turpin? Did you see this, that, and the other? We've got a very professional broadcast. We've got great announcers, all this. We got a great league. We're here to stay, right? And so they thought for sure. They did not think the XFL would outdo them in the ratings. The XFL only had a handful of broadcast network games. I think it was 8 or 9 on ABC compared to USFL, which had 20 some odd. Lost track at some point. They had good, so and then unfortunately the ratings took a hit when the two leagues went up against each other. They splintered each other's audience. That first weekend the USFL kicked off, the XFL had the highest rated game that Saturday when Birmingham was playing and Memphis was having their debut game. They were both on network television. The XFL's ABC noon kickoff, I believe it was Houston and Vegas, had the highest rating that day. And then when these leagues went head-to-head with one another, they were splintering each other. If Fox was on a network and the XFL was on FX or ESPN2, it hurt each other's audience. It limited their audience. So I think personally, from what the conversations that I had as soon as the season was over, and I think we did an interview a few months ago, I think personally, like the XFL on their side, they've been trying to drum up investment money since they started this whole thing. And I think that they don't see, to be honest with you, I don't think they see the light at the end of the tunnel with how they're currently constituted. And by the same token, on
even
the other side,
even if let's say the USFL went away, do you think that they're still view it that way?
I think so. I think there's a lot of question marks when it comes to this thing. The quality of the product is not the issue. The quality of the football is good. The broadcast is good. The problem is capturing the attention and the interest from the public. Right now, both leagues have a very limited niche audience. They do well, comparatively speaking, to similar, although the landscape in television has changed a lot. Like, you got women's basketball that's killing it. You got a lot of sporting entities that do tremendous numbers now. And so the bar has changed a little bit for the sports ratings. And I think the XFL and the USFL are looking at their futures, and they're looking long-term. And in the short term, they've got models for survival and, from a financial aspect, because the key with these leagues is to try to avoid drowning in red, because that's what's happened to football leagues. I don't think people realize, like, these outfits are not minor. It's not like a minor league baseball team in Wichita, Kansas or something, where it doesn't cost much to run a team. These pro football leagues take hundreds of millions of dollars. It takes tens of millions of dollars just for insurance. And then there's so many other costs that are involved here. So I think this is twofold. I think these discussions are business wise to cut costs. And that could be an unfortunate aspect of this that we'll get into in a second. But I think this is about the long-term goal, and to try to get to a position where you're no longer just surviving or cutting costs or cutting corners or having a bare bones kind of outfit or skeleton crew just so you can get to the next year and get to the next year. I think both these entities want to thrive. They want to get to the point where they thrive. Now, the question of how they get there and what they do, because I do think the football fan in me thinks this is like awesome. But part of me is also thinking, at what cost does this merger come? So I hate to be negative with this, but if we're going from 16 teams to, let's just say, and it's been floated out there to me, and to you too, Mark, the possibility of 10 teams, that means 6 teams are gone. Now, the leagues can put it, they can say we've got, like they did with the Tampa Bay Bandits, these franchises are on pause. We're doing this monumental merger get together, and don't worry, we'll bring back the Generals or the Stars or the Roughnecks or whomever. But bottom line, right now, present day, if you're going from 16 teams to 10, you're talking 50 players per team. I'm not great at math, but that's like 300 plus players. That's not counting coaches and staff members and all that.
Mm-hmm.
You also got to figure there's some people that were just hired by these leagues. So it'd be very unfortunate for them to all of a sudden be told, like Anthony Blevins left a sitting NFL job. He wasn't on the verge of being fired by the Giants. He was getting interviewed by NFL teams for special teams coordinator positions. For him to leave the NFL, a sitting job in the NFL, which is pretty risky, to get an opportunity to be a head coach in the XFL, and then to be told a couple months later, "Oh, I'm sorry, buddy, we're not going to have Vegas along for the ride. Go find yourself a job in the NFL or something like that."
Yeah.
That would be a pretty rough thing for him, unless he's taken over one of the USFL franchises or something. He's in Ohio, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's a lot of tough. So, and then if you're contracting, they're not going to put it that way in no PR release. But if you're going from 16 teams to 10, and you're talking about losing 16, I understand a lot of these teams don't have a lot of popularity, or they don't play in their own home markets, or some of them play in their home market and didn't really do as well as they thought. High rent at Ford Field. But if like the Michigan Panthers go away, if the New Jersey Generals, which is I was hoping, because it doesn't feel like a real tri-state area team. They don't feel like the New Jersey Generals because they don't play in New Jersey or New York or anywhere near there.
Mm-hmm.
They play in Ohio. So if they go away, if the Stars go away, there are fans out there that are going to be upset.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a backlash on how you label and brand this merger, whether or not they retain certain things from both leagues. There's going to be fans that we went through this, Mark, with the whole CFL talks, right?
Yes,
So
we did.
the XFL side, the American side was like, do we really want to play 3 downs? Do we really want to play on these like quirky fields with 20-yard end zones and wider fields? Like some fans are like, why don't you play like more of the NFL style? The Canadian side, the traditional side, was like, don't mess with our game. Like, okay, Rock wants to promote our league, fine. Wally Buono, all his history in the CFL, his family's history in Canada, fine, but don't touch the 3-down game. Leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very contentious. And this could be very contentious. There could be a lot of upset USFL and XFL fans if certain things, let's say if the XFL, I don't think it will, by the way, because the NFL wants it. But let's say the XFL kickoff goes away, or certain aspects of the XFL rulebook goes away, or some of the USFL stuff that people like goes away, or some of the teams they like, the Michigan Panthers, the history of it. Let's say the USFL name goes away. It's no longer called the USFL. There's going to be people very upset about that because of the history and the tie-in, all that. And then same thing on the XFL side. Both these brands have spent a lot of time. They have brand equity. The USFL has brand equity through nostalgia and all that, and their recent modern day stuff. The XFL, for better or for worse, the Vince McMahon 2001, the 2020 outfit, which was very good, and then of course the 2023 deal, for better or for worse, new paint jobs with The Rock and Danny Garcia involved, but these names have value, because they've been around for a while. So it remains to be seen. I know, Mark, you've heard some stuff about, maybe you can get into that now because you and I talked about this, but whatever you've heard, it's a little bit tough. Maybe I'll put you on the spot, but there's some stuff that you've heard about the brands themselves and the potential change. I don't know if you want to get
So
into
I mean, that's something that's been kind of floated out there, is that because of that backlash problem that you're talking about, you're going to piss off XFL fans, you're going to piss off USFL fans. A way around it is to get rid of both names and come up with a new name. And that's something that's been floated around there and stronger than I was anticipating. And, for somebody who owns both sites, I mean, I'd be like, really? But I don't know. My fear with that kind of piece, if they decide to get rid of both names, is number one is like the whole corporate, like you're all trying to save money. Now you have to go through this whole process of creating a new name and a new logo and new merchandise. I mean, there's they've been selling all these merchandise at discount. Is it because it has the logo on it and that's why they're getting rid of it? Or is it just because they just want to unload inventory and then bring in new stuff for next year? That's kind of
the way I would handle it is this is my perfect world thing. And I understand I'm not the one who's putting the money into this.
Yeah.
But I would have an XFL side, an XFL conference, a USFL conference, some interconference games during the season, champion meets champion at the end of the rainbow. I wish it was a 16-team league. that's in a perfect world. I don't foresee, unfortunately, I don't foresee that happening. But if you want to give like a National Spring Football League term for the whole thing, but
Mhm.
still retain an XFL division, USFL division, uh, it's hard to get rid of those brands, So
Yeah.
it's like, so it's really tough, So you'd figure, obviously, the Defenders, the Battlehawks, you would assume the Stallions, although there's some worries there in the future with Birmingham because things weren't that great in year 2, and their
Mhm.
deal expires after 2024. So who knows what happens there? But you'd figure something as great as the Stallions have been, especially on the football side.
Yeah.
You'd figure that, and that's a great brand and all that. So you figure that they would be around for the ride. But there's a lot of franchises that might go the way of the Tampa Bay Bandits and then press
Just
the pause
hit the
button.
pause button.
But and where it might frustrate some people. It like one of the Houston franchises could very well get the short end of the stick.
I mean, there's
And
two of them.
there's
We just wrote on XFL News Hub that it seems like, if you're going to put this is kind of how my take was on the teams based on stuff that I was kind of hearing was, Battlehawks, DC Defenders are good, Renegades are good, Brahmas are good. So there's your four. Then Seattle, there was some, attendance wasn't that great, and it's far away. It's way up there, away from the hub. I know players didn't really like, even Seattle Sea Dragons players didn't like playing in Seattle because of like going all the way up there, kind of thing. Orlando, they had, Florida's never really been a great pro sports town, even though the college football is great, but pro sports has kind of been iffy. But those two seem safe. So right there, you have 6. And if you're only going to have 8 teams or 10 teams, you have to make a change. And there's been issues with the logo for the Roughnecks in the past. Maybe, and you have equity, like you said, in the Houston Gamblers, even though the Houston Gamblers, I don't know if anybody was in Houston rooting for the Houston Gamblers or even knew that they existed.
Man, it's unfortunate they haven't played. The Roughnecks have more of a following in Houston than the Gamblers do. I know the Gamblers have history back in that market, but they haven't played in that market in 40 years.
So that's
So
kind of the problem.
yeah,
But if you need to bring in a USFL, because you can't merge and then basically say, okay, well, we're just going to take out the Vipers and add Birmingham. Like you just can't do that. You have to give fans more. The everything I heard, even from the USFL people, is that they all love Canton. Canton's a great town. Canton, the facilities are great. It's growing. The area is growing. You have Cleveland is not far behind, from there. I mean, they were hoping that the Maulers would draw people from Pittsburgh to that venue, but that didn't happen. So there's, so Canton is definitely, so the Canton is 100% in. There's question marks like you talked about with Birmingham as far as, agreements that were there. And the fan base really didn't turn around. I mean, Moose Johnson even mentioned he was disappointed with the ticket sales and kind of year 2 energy at
Moose was
Birmingham.
I got to give Moose credit because that's what people at NBC and Fox and the USFL were telling me, that they were disappointed. So when Moose came out publicly and was disappointed with the ratings, thought they would
Uh-huh.
do much better than the XFL. They were surprised the XFL did better than them.
Yeah.
And then when he came out and said he was disappointed in Birmingham, this is our second year setting up shop there, and they're not coming out for us. And I mean, to the USFL's credit, which I think is one of the unheralded parts about their league, is they have great pricing for tickets. Like they're practically giving tickets, and they do have given away tickets for free, but extremely family friendly. And that's what makes it so disappointing for them. They got
Right. And what would
$10
they
tickets.
do if they raise the ticket prices, which they would
Yeah,
have to do?
yeah, so it's like it was very disappointing. I mean, they bent over backwards to make it as affordable as possible for families to come out. You can talk about the weather, it being too hot. I've heard that excuse.
Oh, yeah.
Like at these stadiums, nobody wants to go out there with a bunch of little kids in 100-degree weather right out in the open, kind of thing. But I mean, there's every excuse under the sun. There's a new gas station that opened up downtown. I mean, as to why people didn't show up.
Yeah.
But it's like I get you got to figure out. A lot of this has to do with business, right? So like, if let's just say hypothetically here, I know I hate getting into this because I usually I try to verify reports and rumors. And even if like 4 or 5 different people tell me something, I gotta like make sure it's concrete before I move forward with it, right? But you have, when you look at this whole thing, if it is 10 teams, right, and if it is April of 2024 when they're playing, both these leagues are actually still in cost-cutting mode, because you have to figure they're still going to do the hub business. Maybe every team's in Arlington. They are still going to do the travel out to the home sites. And you look at this equal merger possibility. You got the USFL potentially, spending less if they've only got 4 teams coming back or 5. And then you got the XFL not having to foot the bill for 8 teams, and now they got an equal partner. So
each team is each entity is only paying for 4 teams. I mean,
right.
50-50.
Yeah. And if you go to 10 teams, let's just say you go to 10 teams and it's 6 XFL teams and 4 USFL teams. Let's just assume, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like an Ohio team, Birmingham, Memphis. I know I'm missing somebody
and
else.
And the Houston Gamblers.
Houston, right? Right. So let's just assume that now all of a sudden Fox is spending less money because they only got four teams to
and they're utilizing the hub, which for all intents and purposes, everybody feels that was a home run.
Yes. And you could put 10 teams right there. You put 10 teams right there in Arlington. Everybody operates from Arlington. Then they go out to their markets, right?
Yep.
And then so now USFL spending less money. The XFL ends up spending less money because now they take 2 teams out of the mix. So now they've only got 6 teams, right? Rather than the 8. Then they're adopting a lot of the USFL models of like seasonal employees and all that. They consolidate this is a tough one, right? Consolidate their workforce. They just eliminated, a bunch of jobs, staff members, because they got less teams now. And then they consolidate all that. So you don't have to, you put the 2 leagues together. You don't have to have as many people working in PR departments or all that kind of stuff. And then so really a lot of this is like cost effective for them. They have to figure out how to make this work and execute this where they can thrive. Like I said, it has to be done right. If you're going to do a merger, you're inevitably going to tick off some people.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it.
There's nothing you could do, but how much you do it, how much backlash how much you do it. You could actually you could have USFL fans saying, "Man, I wish this never happened." You could have XFL fans, loyalists, saying, "I wish this never happened. Why are they doing this? They didn't need to do this."
Yeah.
Right. So it's got to be done the right way. You're trying to make a lot of different people happy now. So
you're not going to make everybody happy.
Yeah, not going to make everybody happy. So it's a real tough one. They have to, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Like I said, from the offset, I'm surprised that we've come to this point this quickly.
And
especially in all the moving parts that need to be put in place. They got, we're talking about the XFL has a draft scheduled, I believe, October the 4th.
October 4th. That's right.
Now,
so that is
if you're announcing a merger beforehand and like, hey, by the way, we're 10 teams now or 12 teams, right? And then all of a sudden, Stallions got the 2nd pick right after the Defenders or whatever. Yeah. Now you have to all of a sudden, both leagues got to be involved. Then you got the awkwardness of situation like USFL teams have been re-signing players to new league contracts. So it's like a lot of the guys who had 2-year deals, their contracts came up. So I wrote about a few of these articles with the Generals where guys got re-upped, right? Their 2-year deal ran out. They didn't sign at the NFL. They didn't leave for the XFL. Their 2-year deals ran out, and the Generals re-signed their players. So what if the Stars are put on pause? They just re-signed their kicker, who set the pro football record for most field goals in a game, Luis Aguilar.
Yeah.
They just re-signed him. So like a week later, all of a sudden, hey, great re-signing, but we're not going to play next year. And then you got a lot of really good players. What if there's no breakers? There's a lot of really good players on these teams that will easily find homes, right? But there are way too many guys that are going to be out of. I mean, that's, like if you're the CFL, right, and you're competing with the XFL and USFL for talent and you're looking for players, you kind of hope that they merge and turn from a 16-team outfit, which is 8 teams in one league, 8 teams in the other, and all of a sudden become a 10-team, because now this opens up a lot of players to come choose your league. So it's not going to be perfect. I'm just so I knew that this was a possibility. I just didn't think it would come this soon.
Agreed. I was thinking year 3, year 4. 5, they would start kind of like having some
The
talks.
conversations I had with people on the XFL side and the USFL side was like, how disappointed they were, how they felt like they should have done better, and how their outlook was a little bit bleak on their future. And so those conversations made me think, you know what? The last resort, only resort might be for them to merge.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe, you know what? Maybe, and I knew about the feelers and I knew about the connections, the natural connections. There was no hat in hand, one side going to the other. There's no like Redbird storming into the USFL headquarters and saying, "Hey, let's do business.
Uh-huh.
How about I buy you? How about I buy you out?" There's no, "Hey, please help us here." No, it's got to be a two-way street.
Yeah.
Both sides, however they pitched it to one another, both sides were interested in the idea because I think they see a little bit the writing on the wall. And
Both
so, like,
leagues.
I think both leagues see the
Yeah.
writing on the wall for themselves. I think they have to show growth. They can't regress like the USFL did in 2023.
Yeah.
And the XFL fell short of expectations because they thought they had a home run. They thought they were going to match what XFL did in 2020. You just add the rock to it, and all of a sudden you're mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't work
No,
out like that. And
didn't
sorry.
happen.
So that's just kind of the way it goes. So hopefully they execute this properly. And judging by some of the things the leagues has done, the XFL playing in Vegas was a huge mistake. The USFL playing in Ohio, tremendous move. Only problem, great location. Playing in Canton, the Hall of Fame. I love it. I love the stadium size. I love Ohio, all of it. Not having a team named after the place you're playing in
Yeah.
makes no sense.
They
Nobody in
thought
Ohio.
Pittsburgh would draw there, and it
Yeah,
didn't.
well, nobody in Ohio, the Browns fans, Cleveland fans, and Cincinnati Bengals fans do not want to see black and yellow. Do
Yeah.
not want to root for a Pittsburgh team. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like the Cowboys coming to play at MetLife Stadium and Giants fans rooting for them. They're not going
Yeah.
to do it. They're not going to support them. They're not going to support the Eagles.
Yeah.
It's like Jets and New England Patriots coming to play in the MetLife for the Jets. Jets fans are not going to support. They're not going to come out and support the New England team. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So anyhow. But that's kind of the story there. So there have been some big mistakes by both sides. So hopefully this merger, meeting of the minds, hopefully they take the right moves to make this a success. That's what I'm hoping.
So you have the layers of the onion. So first is a potential team name change, or the league name change, which would prefer not, because I think it's it's like people. I've told this story before. I knew a person who worked at a company, and they spent $1 million to rebrand, and they came back, and the new company name was One. And it meant it was the stupidest thing that I never used it. And I think there's a little too much juice maybe in the XFL side, like, oh, we need to, branding is so important. I mean, yeah, I like the XFL logo. Do you think that if the XFL logo was like the old one, like that's behind me, that the ratings would have been worse? No, it makes no difference. It really doesn't. So I hope they don't go down that path, because that's really a waste of time and money.
I think they're thinking, like, maybe if I'm trying to put myself in their side, they're thinking, well, okay, we can't call this the XFL because that'll alienate the USFL side if all of a sudden the XFL just absorbs.
And that's the part, yeah.
You can't call it just USFL because that'll upset the XFL side. They just got absorbed by the USFL. So I think they're thinking maybe we come up with like a neutral name that describes. That's why I like my idea. If you're going to come up with a neutral name, still have the XFL conference, the USFL conference, have the interconference games, whatever the road team plays, the home team's rules, and all that kind of stuff, and then set up a champion at the end, the XFL champion versus the USFL champion. Let's say Stallions versus Battlehawks, or whatever, and then that would be really cool. But I don't know if I don't think we're gonna get that. I think there's a chance it's going to be awkward for people to all of a sudden break free from the XFL name and break free from the USFL name.
I mean, I don't care, but I could see that but to me, that might even be like a temporary thing. Like, yeah, they'll be pissed off at first.
Maybe
I'll put in this person. Everybody complained about the Colin Kaepernick thing, and then they were going to, I met people that I knew were like, I'm never watching the NFL ever again. And then 3 or 4 years later, it's even bigger than it was before. So,
True.
I mean,
it's just going to take a while to get used to. Go national and go NSFL. Come on, NSFL.
Yeah, I mean, I like wearing my XFL stuff because I think it looks nice. But anyway, all right. So we've got the
Cool.
merger potential. Oh, we've got the merger and then the name change. We've talked about the teams. What do you think about the schedule? The rumblings that I've been kind of hearing was that that people kind of like, even on the football side, and the NFL side of things, that they like the April start time. Have you heard any
Right.
of that kind of stuff from
Um,
coaches and players?
well, from players and from players, they players that I've talked to and agents, they prefer that the XFL schedule
Hmm.
because the XFL had 66 players that were signed by NFL teams. The USFL had, I believe, 38. So it's a big factor. The reason why the XFL had almost over 20 or 30 more is be close to 30 more is because their season ends in May. So it gives you an earlier jump on latching onto NFL teams. It also allows your body some time to recover a little bit. So rather than, play till July and then join an NFL team in training camp, and then you just played 10, 12 games or whatever. So I know they say there's a flip to that. People say your body's more ready, right?
Yes.
But if you just took the abuse of 12 straight games at running back, you might need a little bit of a break. So, you might need a few weeks to get physically right again. So
Hmm.
anyway, there's a positive and a negative. Players and agents want their players to have an opportunity to get onto an NFL team earlier. I know at the present moment the XFL has more players in the NFL. The XFL in 2023 has more players in the NFL than the USFL does. I believe the XFL has 18 or 19. It's not that big of a wide of a margin. I think the USFL has about 13 or 14. So it's pretty close. The XFL in 2020 has a bunch of players still in the league 4
Hmm.
years later. The Josh Johnsons, PG Walkers, Donald Parham, all those guys.
Hmm.
So it's these leagues produce talent, and we saw Brandon Aubrey had a great open there. Great, he's done a great job after missing an extra point. He's went on to make 7 straight kicks, and he did a
Hmm.
great job outscoring the Jets. Where he had like
Yeah.
16
That's
points or
right.
whatever. Yeah. So yeah, and then we know about Vontae Turpin and all that. So I think that the schedule probably makes more sense from a Fox NBC side for them to be April. There's no perfect time for these things. If people say you should give NFL fans a break and not start immediately after the Super Bowl, and then some people feel like that winter time is the perfect time to have football because people are at home. And then once you get to April, May, June, July, people are outside. And then so
True.
that there's like people, off from school and traveling with their family and doing things. And then at least in February and early March in the Northeast, people are at home. They're going to watch more apt to stay home and watch games. So
But it's that
there's
March
a
Madness, and we saw the March Madness, the ratings, everything went down.
yes, and that's going to happen to anything that goes up against March Madness. I mean, that's
So
just the way it
started
goes.
after March
Yeah.
Madness.
So people say, hey, started after March Madness. And then if you don't go ahead with March Madness, but then you get into the whole NBA playoffs, NHL playoff window after that. So
Hmm.
there's no perfect time for these leagues. It's not like you can, air a game. It's just you have an uphill battle competing against mainstream sports. It's never easy.
Yeah.
So it's not like the XFL in 2020, which was really, kicked a lot of ass.
I mean,
Was
in the
the
weather, I mean, it was a factor, and definitely in Seattle, they had some really games that the weather was bad, and the time. They remember the games were on at like 9 o'clock at night their time or something. It was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
so I mean, those kind of things because they were trying to get away from other things on television. So I mean, and as a fan, I mean, we had one game, the DC Defenders game, where it was raining and the attendance was good considering the weather was so terrible and cold.
Right.
Um, so I mean, the schedule, I could kind of see it going that way. One other piece to talk about is the contract situation. So some of the scuttle that I've heard is that this big, even though they want to do a merger, just like any other big corporate merger that affects, like you said, losing 300 players, losing their job, the United States government is going to have a say in that as well. And you were talking about the complexity of this thing.
Yeah, no question about it. You keep seeing that phrase in all these articles, the regulatory approval. And so, there's going to be a lot of players upset if they lose their jobs. There's
I
going
mean,
to be
and
a
you're
lot.
going to get a regulatory approval by April. I just,
It's a tough one. I got to say, like, I keep thinking there's going to be a snag here at some point. Like, I always thought, like, maybe egos would come into play here. How do you split profits? How do you split expenses? How do you pull that off? How do you merge together
But
and
you
say,
saw
hey,
from Axios, and what I've heard was that they are close. I
right,
never heard that with the CFL.
right. And so, yeah, so that's what everybody's saying. That's a very surprising part. Now, the perfect world, the USFL would still remain as an entity and they would still go on about their business doing what they do. The XFL would still remain as an entity and they would still go on about business doing what they do. The only difference is these two leagues would end up playing each other, the teams, and they would end up playing a championship game together and they would end up promoting together. Same time frame, same calendar. And so uh, perhaps, and that's a 50-50 kind of thing. You just have to figure out the profits end of it. There would be XFL games on Fox. There would be XFL versus USFL maybe on ABC. So it kind of like you'd have to figure out all that stuff, but it would be much easier if the USFL maintained whatever their CBA, whatever they're doing, they play their games. The XFL, talked about potentially a unionized workforce for them postseason. I think Doug Whaley mentioned in a couple of
There's even
interviews.
rumors about the NFLPA
Right.
being the union for
And
it.
that's you
And
bring
where's
up
the
the NFL.
NFL in all this too?
Yeah, that's
Are
you
they
bring up the
pulling
NFL.
strings too?
And this could be like if they prove themselves to be a viable and strong merge kind of super spring league, they could, and we've seen Troy Vincent and the XFL's relationship with the NFL,
Who happens to
and
just show up in the middle of, before the NFL season starts, shows up on the XFL's YouTube channel.
yeah, he's a big partner. He has close relationships with people in the big wigs there in the XFL. So he's
Is
a
that
big part.
coincidence or is that
Well, I don't know if it's in relation to this, but it doesn't hurt if they build an even stronger league, a spring league that can help. I mean, you had whatever it was, almost 120 players or whatever that combined from both leagues that were signed by NFL teams. They work together maybe, and they build up a stronger league that's just one now, but a stronger league. They can get even better talent as they go along. They can be the prime destination for players that just missed the cut in the NFL, and even guys who just maybe want to keep it going. That they want to keep their career going, that have some fame, some that have been successful in the NFL, but still want to keep playing. So it's interesting to see where that all falls. But I think a lot of times with these entities, their end game was to get the NFL to financially buy in.
They got the money.
It could happen. It could happen. I wouldn't rule it out if they execute this properly. I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't them being more enticing now to the NFL and to investors.
One thing I'll circle back on too, there's a couple things out there, and I heard this as a thing. But has anybody noticed, number one, that Axios was the one that broke the story, not ESPN, who has always broke every single XFL story that was ever out there that was involved.
Sure.
That's number one. Number two, there are no XFL games to watch on ESPN Plus. They've all been moving to the XFL's YouTube channel. So the theory is that I don't know if this was a catalyst for this move or what, but we all heard about what's the stuff that Disney is doing, trying to unload ABC. I've been following that story, and changing things with ESPN was a catalyst that ESPN is out of the XFL game, and we've heard nothing.
That's another hurdle too, because there's a 5-year deal there. So
Gotcha.
nothing is permanent in life, but the Disney and the XFL have a 5-year deal through I believe the 2027 season.
But if Disney sells ABC and changes up ESPN,
maybe, but I don't know. I don't know when that's going to happen. I mean, do they sell off ABC and still keep ESPN? Do they get rid of all of it?
I think the way is that they're going to sell ABC and it's going to go bye-bye, but Disney will still keep ESPN because that has value.
Then the XFL still has the contract with Disney through 2027. So whatever Disney has, if Disney has no channels, they still have. If Disney decides we're not going to have any channels, they still have a contract to air XFL games till 2027. Now I don't know the particulars of whether or not that contract can be broken, if they can work their way out of it, if they whatever.
Yeah.
But they have a deal with the XFL,
and I would
that would be the cachet. That would be the cachet of this. We saw this in the XFL in 2020, by the way, and a spring league that's promoted and cross-promoted on Fox and ABC. That's what happened in XFL in 2020. They were on Fox and ABC.
Yeah.
And they cross-promoted. They said, "Oh yeah, the coming up later on ABC," which was cool to see. Like Fox and ABC kind of like putting each other over, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term. And then, so could you imagine a Super Spring League where you have the kind of exposure where you can be on ABC, you can be on NBC, you can be on Fox and ESPN. So I mean, that's a lot. Of course, FS1, and then of course the streaming networks, a Peacock or whatever. But that's a heck of a package. You can really cross promote like crazy. Like you could have you see USFL ads all over SmackDown, which is like one of the top shows on network television for 18 to 49. So you could see XFL ads on Fox. You could see USFL ads on ABC. So I mean, if they work this out correctly, if they can, those heads can get together. It has happened in the past. Like I said, XFL in 2020, they were on Fox and ABC,
Yeah.
which is a hell of a coup to be able to
Yeah.
pull that off. And they did very good ratings. They still have the highest rated non-NFL game. The XFL does in 2020 with the Vipers and the New York Guardians. So it would be kind of interesting, and then to see how they work that out. But I think that's an advantage. Like, how do you compete with that if you try to enter this space? How do you compete with this Super Spring League that's on Fox, NBC, and ABC?
Yeah.
Has Disney, has all that working together to promote?
And when The Rock appeared on Pat McAfee, it really took a long time. They were really talking about wrestling for the most part. And I'm
Sure.
like, The Rock is there in front of all these college students it's college. We know Pat McAfee's football guy and college football. And there was like a little segment, and they did talk about the XFL, and it was the same, I'm proud of
Yeah, the
Danny and
usual stuff.
the
Yeah.
usual stuff, but nothing like you're right in front of this is all football fans, and it wasn't really put over. That was a red flag for me too. But
Yeah,
then
I
it was,
know. I had a coach. I can't name who the coach is. Reached out to me and said, "Hey, did you catch the Rock Pat McAfee thing?" And I said, no, I have to check it out later. I have to check out the clips. He goes, I don't think the Rock even mentioned the XFL. And then I had to go back to the interview and I asked a couple of my friends, and then I found the section and then I sent it to the coach. And then he did mention the XFL. And yes, we did see a fan in the crowd with a Brahmas
yes,
gear on, which was
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
The thing is, I gotta say, like, people don't understand. Like, when you're in this bubble, I'm not gonna curse here, but a lot of people don't give a crap about a lot of people in mainstream don't give a crap about the XFL, the USFL. And even the interviewers don't. They'll bring it up because out of respect for The Rock, they'll say, "Hey, you have a football league," and they'll talk about it.
they
But
talked
that's
about
a lot.
Termana. He even said in the
Yeah.
beginning, he was like, yeah, Termana and this and Project Rock.
They're really not interested in it. Like, the mainstream sports world is not thinking about who's going to be the Seattle Sea Dragons quarterback next year if Ben DiNucci doesn't come back. Will it be Harrison Frost? Nobody's having that conversation. Nobody's thinking about, hey, if Alex Magoo doesn't come back, can Jamar Smith live up to the hype and with the Stallions? There's like, we're thinking about that.
Yeah.
But the mainstream media does not care. The XFL is so off their radar. That's what they got to change. They got to, they thought with The Rock they'd have more product awareness, and so they thought that would help, lure in some of the mainstream and casual people to sample the league. You have a female owner, Danny Garcia,
Yeah.
but that didn't really pan out the way they thought it would. And so you got to realize when we're in this bubble that these leagues are not, to the average sport fan, they're not important.
All right,
So
let's
you have to try
pretend.
to change it, but that's the way it is.
So let's take a step back and pretend that they are going to merge, but it's not this new name and teams and all this other stuff. Even though, again, I'll point out Axios was the one who said that of equals and it's going to get done soon.
Right.
What would the other version of this, let's say like everybody that was talking whatever is completely wrong. What would this other version look like? And for me, I would have them, hey, we're going to do something together. We're all going to go to the hub together, but we're going to do our season this year. USFL is going to do their season. And maybe we'll play a couple games against each other because when there's that overlap, and then we're going to finish the season. Like, so USFL does their thing, XFL does our, and then in 2025, we'll bring it back as a merged league or something like that. I mean, is that a possibility?
I wouldn't rule it out just because of the time frame. They got
Right.
so there's
There's not a lot of time. They couldn't even get together the schedule until like 2 weeks before the season was about to start. And I'm
right. So
exaggerating, but
yeah, I hear you. And like the people who went through the XFL CFL talks are like kind of waiting for something to go wrong, like something to fall apart here. That was a long drawn out process.
that
I
was
gotta say.
months. Yes.
That was months, and then they talked about everything under the sun, like a parent company, like an umbrella company that encompasses both leagues, and then the financial model, promotional, all that, merging the leagues, half a hybrid kind of between the American and Canadian game. They talked about everything.
I'll bring
So
up since that's old news. I will bring up something that somebody had reached out to me a week or two before that. No, it was something like that. That there was this thing that they were talking, and I thought that this guy was, I don't know who this person was or whatever. I pitched it to you, and then you went to your sources, and then the next day the announcement came out that they were talking. I just want to point that out in the history of the CFL XFL talks.
right.
That's how the news broke, and I always kind of think it was partly because I said something to you, then you started talking to your sources, and
Yeah,
it
no,
was
for
like, hey,
sure.
it got out here, and then that's. But anyway, I just
I hear so many things sometimes that I just blow it off. Like sometimes people say, "Hey, did you hear?" I'm like, uh, and then I look into something. I go, "Holy cow! Wait a minute.
yeah,
It might be maybe it's not quite what this person said, but it's in that neighborhood."
yeah. But
So
anyway,
anyway,
going back
that
to the
happens. But yeah, so I think that scenario
what's
you
version
played.
2 of this merger could look
Yeah,
like.
that scenario for me, I already told you what I prefer. But even if it was like a scaled down 12-team league, which is not what I prefer, but if it's a 12, I say you go for it right now, and you don't do the wait it out, and maybe we'll play each other, and we'll wait till next year to do it. Um, so I would say, like just go right into it. Whether you start in February, whether you start in April, I don't think they're going to start in February and play all the way till July and have this crazy like CFL length season where it's 19, 18 games or whatever. I don't think we're going to see that. I would like,
Hmm.
honestly, I would keep both. If you're going to have one cool name that encompasses both, fine. I honestly, like I mentioned earlier in this interview, I would have an XFL side, a USFL side. When they play each other, the home team gets to play under the league rules. I would have interconference games, and then at the end of the year, I would have champion versus champion. You hoist an XFL champion, you hoist a USFL, and you got to do it at the same time because you can't have an XFL champion win their championship in May, and then they're not going to hang around until mid-July to play the Stallions. We all assume
Right.
the Stallions are going to win again. So you have the Stallions versus, say, the Defenders. They can't because most of those Defenders guys and XFL players are going to be in NFL camps. They're going to be in NFL teams. They're not going to wait until July. So to play a team, they're not even going to be around. So that's kind of the story there. So, but I would if you're going to do it right now, I don't care when it starts, whether it starts in February and April. I would prefer that they both kind of keep their identity, but still merge. So, like, you still have the XFL with their identities, you still have the USFL. And if you want to make it 6 teams on one side, 6 teams on one side, that's fine. I would prefer 8 and 8, 16.
Mm.
I understand that maybe that's not feasible, right? I hope that I'm wrong on that, but I haven't heard that they're going with 16. So I want to be wrong. But that's how I would do it. I would keep the identity of the league. If you want to call it some fancy name that, you know, is like the umbrella on top of it all.
Yeah.
But I think it could be fun if you keep all the social media handles and the websites and you keep that and you get that trash talk going like during the season of like, oh yeah, the
Mm.
Battlehawks wait till they're gonna kill the Stallions or what have you. So I
Yeah.
mean, showboats, yeah, they look what happened to the showboats when they played the Roughnecks if the Roughnecks are around.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff. I think it would I would like to keep it that way. Your suggestion's not a bad one. It's just you got to line up the 2 seasons to be at the same time. You
I
can't
mean,
just
but
like,
if you can get through this year, because
right,
I'm just thinking in terms of all the agreements, because then the USFL they went through year 3. I would assume a lot of those agreements were 2 or 3 year agreements, so they would kind of be done, and then they can be like, okay, now we can renegotiate. We can renegotiate with Birmingham, and we can do all these things. The players' contracts, but like you said, I don't know if they signed another 2 year deal, that
right,
whole thing. But so let's just and the final kind of thought to kind of wrap this up.
sure,
what are all the, I mean, I was thinking like, what would be really some of the cool things? Number one, let's say they do merge and they come up with a new name and whatever. Week one to kick off the season, Birmingham Stallions versus the Arlington Renegades, the two champions going at it. I'm hyped for that. I'm
That's
also
awesome.
hyped if you're talking. Let's say that the
I'll take
Houston,
Stallions minus 5.5.
and then you got whether they played in Birmingham. I mean, XFL fans, I would go out to see that one. You kidding me?
Yeah,
But as
that
long
would
as
be
they're not a
tremendous.
DC
That
Defenders
would be
home game.
fun. That would be fun. Like it's like barring wrestling terms, it's like NWO versus WCW. It's like DC versus Marvel.
Oh, start the
Those two,
season with them playing
yeah,
each other.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's like when worlds collide. I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I like the idea of them getting together, promoting together, and doing all that, but still kind of keeping their identities in a way. So, because I think they've built, I know these leagues are not super popular in the mainstream, but I think there's some identity building that has taken place with the XFL in 2020 with Bob Stoops with the Renegades and the Defenders and the Battlehawks and the Stallions and all the success they've had. There have been seeds planted to build these identities, and the USFL has their own niche and the XFL has their own niche. And I think if you can kind of retain that while still coming together,
mm-hmm.
that would make it more fun than all of a sudden say, hey, forget about the XFL, forget about the USFL. Welcome to the National Spring Football League.
Right.
Or, so, and then, oh, yeah, by the way, we got the Stallions too. And remember the Defenders, they're here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's, it's like, so I just think I prefer my idea, but I know that what they're doing is business related. So hopefully they hit on the right concept and they execute their vision properly. And so it's still hard to believe that we're coming to this. This
Yeah.
seems too
I
fast.
thought
Too
this
fast.
was
I
2025.
knew this was a possibility for the future, and I was hoping that egos can be checked and that they can get together so they can build a super league and that they can put their resources together and their brains together, and so they can survive and thrive. But I didn't know it would happen this soon. I think it's very telling that no matter who made the first call, and I know how it worked out, but no matter who made the first call, it's very telling that the other side was willing to listen.
I've got two
So it's
other things.
interesting.
One,
Sure.
I think a draft would be off the charts because you're talking about, let's say that the New Jersey Generals or the Stars, or even with the Houston Gamblers or Roughnecks, like if those guys, Max Borghi is a free agent and he could go somewhere, or Cole McDonald or Mark Thompson or some of these guys like being involved in the drafts, that would be really cool. What are your thoughts on that? And that's
Yeah,
coming up October
that would
4th.
be that would be great. I don't know what they're going to do with this draft, because if they announce, I mean, September's flying right by. We're in the 20th
It
today.
is September 20th, folks, right now.
So we're talking about whatever, a couple of weeks or whatever it is,
Yeah,
or
like
something like that
two
for
and a
the
half
draft.
weeks.
Yeah, like 2.5 weeks. So they better get a move
Yes,
on whatever they're
actually
doing.
2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today. So they better get a move on from what they're doing here. So they got to figure it out. They got to announce what they're doing, and then they got to figure out whether or not they're immediately going to this new joint league in 2024, and how they're going to incorporate the rosters and do that. There's so much heavy lifting here. So I'm fascinated to see how they roll this out.
How about one? I'll give you one other thing and then we'll get your final thoughts. But what if they did? Because I'm like, okay, you have an opportunity to do something really unique, and there's a lot of creative thinkers around this football league. What if they were to do something like the Premier Soccer kind of thing, where it's like the 10 best teams are in the tier one, and they play February to wherever, and then you could keep the other ones, and maybe the other ones who technically don't have a stadium or whatever, let them play like just in Arlington or in Texas for part of it. And then if they do well or whatever, then one team moves up and one team's moved down. I mean,
Oh, like a relegation kind of thing.
yeah. So you
Yeah,
got, you could,
interesting.
I don't know.
But the only thing I like, that sounds like that's a fun setup and concept. And I'm such a football nerd that I think there was a football game that had that. It was like it was a very crazy football game, Blitz the League. I think they had a relegation system where you had to move up from one to the next. The only thing with doing that is like you kind of telling people I understand it works for soccer, right?
Yeah.
But football. but you're almost telling people what the inferior league is or what the inferior group
Oh,
is.
yeah.
Like, you're like kind of saying these teams right here, they're the lower level. It makes it fun because there's the threat of falling down the
Right.
ladder, so that's kind of, I get it, right?
And a
But I don't know
unique
if you want
experience for football fans rather than, I mean,
it
one
is
of the
kind of
things that we
fun.
like about the CFL, and I've grown to
I
like,
like it better if you had more teams. Like, I like it better if you had more teams than if it's like just 8 teams.
Mhm.
Because if it's like a 20 team or 24 team league, that's what, then it's a little bit, when you have a smaller league, you only have 8 teams. Like, imagine last year, you probably would have put the Renegades in the basement and they end up winning the whole thing.
That's true.
4-6,
That's true.
and then
Yeah.
same thing on the other side in the USFL. You had a bunch of 4-6 teams
Well,
that
yeah,
made
the
the playoffs.
Maulers
Screw
weren't
them.
even
Yeah,
that great.
they get to the championship game.
Yeah.
Whatever. So anyhow, but it's not a bad idea. It's a unique and interesting concept. Obviously, Redbird with Liverpool and all that.
Yeah.
They're familiar with
They
that
are
relegation
familiar.
stuff, so they know it.
All right. Final thoughts on this merger. And 2 weeks away from a draft, Mr. Mike Mitchell.
Hey, it's crazy. I still don't believe it. I know it's
Yeah.
real. I still don't believe it. Like, I don't believe it. I'm so fascinated. I'm like everyone out there. I'm fascinated to see where they land. Um, I shouldn't be skeptical. But for some reason, I'm a little bit skeptical because I see when you start putting the pieces together and look at how it could be, the configuration can be, you start seeing the possibility of teams being lost. That's one of the things I really liked is that you had 2 fun, different, unique leagues, and you've
Mhm.
got 16 teams. And for me, that's like pretty awesome to have 16 teams, over 800 players playing. The idea that maybe there'll only be 10 or 12 or something like that. I know it's probably for the betterment, for the long haul,
Mhm.
so these leagues can last and merging and all that. But eh, I got to say, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed if a bunch of teams. That's the thing. Like both these leagues are like, well, how does the USFL expand? Well, boy, we got to take care of our own house. We don't even have our teams playing in their own stadiums. And then with the XFL, you go, well, how do we expand? And you go, well, expansion would be fun, but we need to be able to make sure we could pay these bills. And what are we going to do with Vegas and all that? Now merging
You
2
can
leagues,
expand. That's true.
you
You're right
expand
here.
immediately, right?
Yeah.
You expand immediately, so that's the fun part about it. But in a perfect world, it'd be 16 teams. I think the TV ratings are limited for these entities too because they only have like 8 dedicated cities. So if you're lucky enough to have 8 markets that really care about your league, right? Maybe you
And it
get lucky.
matters to Fox and NBC and ABC, where they could, I mean, they could always put these games on streaming, but they might
Right.
only have a certain amount of slots. Hey, we're only going to give you 4 slots a week between the
And
3
and
networks.
the weakness that these leagues have is they don't have. I know people don't like this because they want to bring up the Portlands and the San Diegos, and I get it. I'm all for San Diego. I wish one of these teams were in San Diego, right? But I think one of the weaknesses they have also in ratings is they're not in the New York market. They're not in the LA market. Those are the 2 biggest television markets out there. So, and they don't really have there isn't really a West Coast flavor. I know
No.
we had Vegas. There isn't really a West Coast flavor in these leagues. So there's a little bit of that Midwest stuff in the South, but there really isn't like a strong Northeast. And you theoretically with the USFL before this crazy merger that's coming up, they got Philly and Pittsburgh and Jersey. So you would think, they would have that strong Northeast element, but unfortunately they do not.
Mm.
So we'll see how it goes after the merger here. I'm going to be disappointed if the Generals aren't part of this. But it's possible they might not be. They might be one of those pause teams, and that would be very unfortunate. I'm a Generals fan going back from when I was a kid. So I was a Herschel Walker guy. I know a lot of people don't like him politically, but he was an awesome football player.
Yeah.
So he rushed for like 2,500 yards in the USFL, 18 games. So anyway, but the Generals, the XFL not having a New York team or a New Jersey team to me has always been a fail. And the USFL having a team with a New Jersey name but not actually playing there, that's disappointing. And then if the Generals go away, that to me that's like you have to just eat it. You have to understand this is business. It's the same thing
Yeah.
when the New York Guardians when they announced that the New York Guardians weren't going to be a part of the
Yeah.
XFL anymore. I was really disappointed. So
Mhm.
I mean, but I understand it's a business. But these other choices they made didn't exactly Vegas Vipers with a crazy field and broadcast teams looking like they're going to topple over ladders to call the game, and
Yeah,
then
I was surprised no one got hurt
maybe
there.
maybe you were better having the Guardians with 20,000 people at MetLife Stadium and 10-degree below weather, so rather than 4,000 yahoos in a Vegas field who don't even care about the league. So anyhow, but that's neither here nor there. But I think from a business standpoint, you're missing out on the ratings when you have small leagues and you only have 8 teams, you miss out on ratings because you only have 8 dedicated markets. If you have a 16-team league, now you have 16 markets. You have more games to sell too. So you have 8 games a week. You have to figure out where you're going to put them. Saturday and Sunday, you might have triple headers. You might do a CFL thing.
Yeah, it's in a bigger net cast as far as out there.
Because if you have a 16-team league now, you got 8 weekend games. So you might have Friday games, Saturday games, Sunday games. You might have to figure it out.
Thursday night,
right? Maybe a Thursday night, weekly Thursday night game.
Or Monday Night Football on ABC.
Why not? Why not? That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So it's there's some aspects of this where I know that I might be a little disappointed. So I'm waiting to see how they handle this, how they execute this. I'm fascinated by all this. I've been an advocate of this concept for the longest time. So it's about thriving. Can they finally put together an outfit, an entity, a league that stands the test of time? And so we'll see how they this could be in there. They're not never going to say this in the PR release. This could be, hey, this is our last ditch effort. If we don't succeed with this, we're done.
Yeah.
So they're not going to say that in the PR release, but that's almost the sense of this thing. That's how I feel about this. Right now.
This is too early. This makes me uncomfortable because it's too early.
They're going for it, and it almost seems like an act of desperation. On both sides. It really.
Hey, you have MLFB or whatever it is, that Frank Murtha league.
Yeah, they're not scared of that. They're not scared of their
or fan control. I got an email from Fan Control Football today.
Oh, cool.
So I got an in real life thing last year. Somebody from Fan Control Football. I was like, are we coming back in the spring? So, and then we had the indoor football league.
That'd be cool. There's so much indoor football now coming back. You get the Arena League and then National Arena League and everything else. IFL, the Indoor Football League. So you got so many different leagues out there. So Fan Control Football, that serves a niche too. Maybe they'll come back, but we'll see what happens with Murtha's $50 bill Jamboree League. How are you going to compete? Now you got the XFL and USFL out there on major networks and all that with star power. How are you going to compete with that? How are you going to get on national television and do that? I'm all for it. Many leagues want to show up and pay players. Go for it.
Yeah.
But maybe this could be a good thing. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Maybe this could be a good thing. Like if for whatever reason the XFL/USFL, whatever it's called, is 10 teams, maybe that opens up an opportunity for a Murtha-like league to go ahead and find some extra players that they otherwise wouldn't have had when there was 16 teams. So
true. Yeah, the Fan Control Football could use the players.
Right.
So, all right, Mike Mitchell, appreciate you coming on the program. And everybody knows where to find you on Twitter and all that other stuff. So we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, for having me on. Fun times. It's only going to get more interesting from here.
Yes, this is true. All right, thanks.
Thanks, brother.